What's going on, everybody? Welcome to finally another installment of Prospects Overload. My name is Drake Man. I'm your lovely, talented host, as always. And finally, finally, school is out for both me and my co-host, Austin Farmer. Austin, say hi.
What's up, everybody? Glad to finally be back here and glad that school's over. Thank God.
Yeah, school is a massive pain. I titled this "School's Out for Summer" because obviously for you, school's out, but for me, I have to go back in about 14 days. So, or 2 weeks.
Boo.
Yep, I know, but you know what? I'm trying to graduate sooner rather than later. But Austin, we have a guest. He's been on our show before, but he is one of the smartest guys of the draft. He is basically everything you'd want from a scout. Let's welcome Brian Recca.
He is the Aristotle of the draft.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate the kind words and glad to be here. Good to be back.
All right. That is very Brian, let's get pumped.
I am pumped. This is me pumped.
Okay, all right. All right. All right, we're gonna start with stat of the day, which is one of my favorite things to do on this show. All right, so for stat of the day today, we are talking about the guys that put the ball in play, low K percentage, and this is the lowest K rates in A ball. So we have Graham Pauley of the San Diego Padres at 10.3%, Nate Furman of the Cleveland Guardians at 10.4%, Jared Serna of the New York Yankees at 11%, Omar Hernandez of the Kansas City Royals at 11.1%, Caleb Ricketts of the Philadelphia Phillies at 12%. Also at 12% is Moises Ballesteros. Pardon me if I mispronounced the name, of the Cubs. And then you got Mike Collado of the Cleveland Guardians at 12.1%. RJ Yeager at 12.5%, and he's with the Cardinals. Chandler Simpson of the Tampa Bay Rays at 12.6%, and Javier Sanaja of the Miami Marlins at 12.7%. Is there anybody you guys want to highlight?
Yeah, I'm really interested in Chandler Simpson on the Rays. He was a really good story last year as a transfer to Georgia Tech. High contact, like 80 run, but like almost no power. He was a shortstop, and they moved him to center field. That kind of seems better for his skill set in general, and kind of just kept doing the same thing with the Rays. And it's gonna be really interested to see how they utilize them, and if there's going to be any more power moving forward. So yeah, really interested, really like Chandler Simpson, fun guy.
We all know the Rays, man. I mean, Chandler Simpson could come out one year and just start hitting 20 home runs. We don't even know. It's just the Rays. They have like some type of cheating system. We don't know. But Austin, is there anyone there that you want to highlight?
Yeah, the only one that I've seen from this list is Graham Pauley, and I know that you're high on him as well, and it makes total sense that he'd be at one because that guy hardly ever strikes out. I've seen a number of like Elsinore games so far this year, and he's really good about putting the ball in play.
Yeah. I saw Graham Pauley at Arizona Complex League, and that's what made me a huge fan of his. And but to be fair, he is a little bit older for low A because he is 22, so he should be in high A or even double A at this point.
Yeah, he'll get called up sooner than later, I would imagine.
I think I'm gonna pass on this because my guy that I'm gonna talk about, I'm gonna be talking about later, but he is on this list, so that is a little foreshadowing for the listeners. Anyway, we're gonna move on to another topic that could be a little controversial, depending on what we say. I'm calling this hot or cold. How good is he? And we're talking about Brennan Davis, who's the Cubs prospect that at one point looked to be rising rather quickly, got injured, started hitting terribly, got injured again, and this year he's not hitting as well as he should. What do you guys think? Your thoughts on Brennan Davis?
So fun fact, my cousin was the first person, if any of you are familiar with MLB The Show, they have a system called Parallels where you can like level up the cards that you get in the game. He was the first one to max out Brennan Davis in MLB The Show last year, which he's a huge Brennan Davis fan now. I don't know why he chose him, but he did. But anyway, he it's unfortunate because he looked like he was on the right trajectory. He was a great story. He was like one of those guys where in like, he was drafted like 2018. He was like really toolsy and raw. And then we talked a lot about like how like certain players would be hurt more by like the 2020 minor league season being canceled. And like Brennan Davis was like definitely would have been like, suspect, prime suspect number one for that kind of thinking. So the fact that he like came in 29, he came back in 2021 and was so good, it was like, whoa, like, it was like really awesome to see. And it's like, this guy's for real. And then, he's had a lot of back injuries now. The strikeouts are piling up. From what I understand, there's some questions about like, his like athleticism, like his like, flexibility, things like that, just because, probably tied to his his injuries. And obviously back injuries. We know so much about like the human body now, and like, we can do Tommy Johns if you get tear ligaments in your knee, you know what to do, but like backs, you just never know. And we saw it with David Wright, where pretty much he ended his career. Carlos Rodon can't get back on the mound right now. He's having back issues. It can be scary. But on the positive side, he is in AAA. He's cut down his strikeout rate a lot, and obviously that's been his biggest, kind of knock on his profile overall. So like there are some positive things, even though like he's batting like under 200 or whatever, and the OPS isn't good. At least he's not striking out a ton. Like last year was just, last 2 years even, it was just a lot of strikeouts. So I don't think you can just say he's not a prospect anymore because you just don't know, especially with health stuff. If he that's his injury situation, his back stuff like turns, and he starts feeling healthier, we could see like the same guy, and now he's not striking out anymore. That would be awesome. I know it's kind of just like a wait and see, but I'm not ready to give up on Brennan Davis. And you know, if anything, if I was like another MLB team, that Brendan Davis would be like, depending on his health, would be like the kind of guy I would like to buy low on and potentially, catch lightning in a bottle with someone who's close to the majors.
Austin, what do you think?
So I'm not gonna lie, the only time that I've seen any Brendan Davis in game action was at the AFL, and I wasn't all that impressed. And I hadn't seen him prior to that, so I can't really go back and say what he looked like, but I just really wasn't that impressed overall with Davis there. But he did look athletic, or he did look like he was an athlete and everything. Just his hit, I didn't see a whole lot of projection with it, and I don't think he has too much power. And I would say he's more cold than hot, but yeah, he is in AAA, so he might end up debuting and then working with the Cubs, and we'll see what happens with them. That's all I'll say.
Well, let's also remember he's only 23 years old, so he still has that. Even though these last 2 years have pretty much been lost seasons for Brennan Davis, because I watched him when he was rehabbing at Arizona Complex League, and I did. It was a small sample size of 3 at bats, but he just looked horrible. Like he was whiffing his stuff in the dirt. Like I think some 18, 19-year-old kid made him look really bad. But like Brian was saying, like these last 2 years, it's just been constant strikeouts, constant injury. Like he's not the same player like he was projected to be, but he could still be very serviceable, especially at only 23 years old. But I feel like one thing for him could possibly be leaving the Cubs, especially because now, you have Pete Crow Armstrong, you have a bunch of outfield prospects that are now playing above him, and how he's starting to get buried lower and lower. But that's just my feeling towards that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And now the Cubs are kind of in this position where they could compete. They're right around 500. They're not too far behind. Like I believe, like it's either the Brewers or the Pirates are in first. They're probably not too far behind them. I imagine maybe only a few games. You have a lot, like you said, a lot of outfielders in the system. You have Ian Happ and Bellinger and Suzuki, and you have a pretty strong outfield right now. Like that, that's the kind of guy that you might move in a trade to bolster another spot. And on the flip side, that's a guy who, hey, he was like a top 50 overall prospect in baseball not that long ago, and you're probably get him for a lot cheaper now. So I don't know. I like again, I'm not ready to give up on him. There's a reason why he was, so highly regarded, and just seems like a lot of the issues with him are health related, and just missing so much time from the games, whether that was 2020 or last year with everything that went down. It's could take him a while to get it back on track. You know, just have to wait and see. But yeah, I don't think you can just give up on him and say he's not a prospect anymore or anything like that.
All right, so that was very interesting there about Brennan Davis, and now we're going to move on to where they come from, and we're just going to talk about the Reds minor league system. I mean, it's gotten substantially better. I have a couple guys that I've been wanting to highlight with you guys, but I know, Brian, you just want to talk about the Reds system in general. So I'll let you take over really fast.
I mean, I'm fine with if you want you want to start with the guys you laid out. I just don't have like too much familiarity with a lot of those guys, which you know, kind of my backgrounds in like the draft stuff. So a lot of the international guys, I don't. Some of them just sneak through the cracks
All
sometimes.
right.
So.
Okay. All right. So these are all guys that I personally have seen from Arizona Complex League, and they all just, I hate saying this because I'm a Cardinals fan, but, you know, they all just impressed me a lot. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Carlos Jorge, 19 years old. Currently, these might be a little bit skewed now, but as when I wrote this, he was slashing 305, 387, 476 with an 863 OPS and a 140 weighted runs created plus. Leonardo Balcazar, he is 18 years old as of writing this. 324, 427, 471 with an 898 OPS with a 151 weighted runs created plus. And Hector Rodriguez, also 19 years old, just like Jorge, slashing not as good as the other ones, but 213, 289, 440 with a 729 OPS and 100 weighted runs created plus. And each of them have 80 plus plate appearances. And it just interested me because I actually was introduced to Carlos Jorge from, I believe, someone at Prospects Live, but I can't really remember who it was. And then I went to go see him, and the ball just jumps off his bat. Very exciting player, has some power in his bat. It should be above average to plus hit. Balcazar is another guy that I don't think he'll have too much power, but he has substantial hit to his game. And Hector Rodriguez is kind of just, he's hit and speed, but it's kind of like, power, hit, speed with these three guys. And the Reds fans should be really excited about all three of them. I know neither of you really saw them live, I don't think, but you guys have anything to say about these three?
Yeah, so I remember someone was telling me about before, like right when like minor league season started, about the Daytona A-ball Reds team, and I was interested in it because Cam Collier and Sal Stewart and some other guys were on there, and then you know one of my colleagues mentioned specifically Carlos Jorge and said, keep an eye on this guy, and I'm like, oh, okay, and he's like, yeah, it's like not sure where he fits defensively, but he just hits everything and super young, and just another guy to add to the mix, and kind of worked out there because they got Collier at third, they got Sal Stewart wherever Sal Stewart's playing these days. Yeah, just like really loaded squad of hitters. And Balcazar, I really haven't seen much either, but again, it's like kind of like I've heard about him a little bit, and yeah, he's looked pretty good at shortstop, and definitely has those like hitterish tendencies, it seems like. So don't really know much about Rodriguez.
Austin, what about you?
Yeah, so looking at the video that you got for Carlos Jorge, I also really like his power potential, and it looks like he's still is on the leaner side for the most part. So if he adds like, let's say another 10, 15 pounds, he could do some serious damage at the plate. And also based off the video that you got from ACL with Balcazar, I remember he hit the ball really, really well, and he hit it hard enough that it gives me enough projection to give him a 55 hit. Again, I don't think he's going to hit for all that much power, but I think that he hits the ball hard enough and well enough that he'll hit at an efficient rate that, you know, he should be a solid piece for the Reds. And as far as Rodriguez, I can't really tell you much about him as well.
Well, I have some really crappy news here. Balcazar actually got an ACL tear, and he's out for the year. So that kind of sucks, especially because what you were talking about with I just wanted to look and see how if his slash line was like how much that changed from when I wrote this. But yeah, he had a ACL tear, so he's out for the year, and that Daytona Dragons team does lose a really good hitter there, and especially for an ACL tear, that's going to take some time to heal. But yeah, all three of these guys are substantial prospects for the Red, or up and coming prospects for the Reds. So it's very interesting to just talk about how much they've changed. Because if we remember, they did not have a good system. What, like 3-4 years ago, 2-3-4 years ago, something like that. It was, and now it's completely changed.
To be fair, they traded away their whole team when they were competing, so I don't want to give them too much credit for that. They were basically a 500 team and traded everything away and blew it up, which kind of, you know, I wouldn't be happy about if I was a Reds fan. So it's great that you know, they have restocked the system so fast and they have a lot of exciting players, but at the same time, you know, it cost a lot.
Oh yeah, you can tell with yeah, they're it's not been pretty the last 2 years, but hey, Reds fans, your system is looking mighty good. So,
but the Reds managed to beat the Rangers somehow.
Man, the life of a miserable Rangers fan, I guess. Hey, at least your team's in first
Pretty
place, not the
much.
Cardinals.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they're having a great season.
Yeah, they're in
Yeah,
first
but they
place,
still
dude.
lost to the Oakland Athletics, and then they lost to the Reds earlier. So, you know, winning season, will it last? I don't know.
Hey, to be fair, Brent Rooker has, you know,
Don't you
ruined
dare
a lot of
mention that
hearts.
name. How dare you mention that name right now? I'm not over that.
Hey, he's the only All-Star for the Athletics this year.
I
so
don't care.
He needs some mention, you know?
I really don't care. Someone
They won that
in my
series,
fantasy
though,
league,
right?
take them off my hands.
They won both series. They played against the A's, though, didn't they?
Well, someone in my fantasy league needs to take him off my hands because I can't have him on the squad anymore. I'm totally leaving this in too.
Yeah, no, he's just a salty Rangers fan, I guess. Again, at least you're not a Cardinals fan. They're currently the worst team in the NL, so.
Sounds about right.
Or a Mets fan, man. You know, that's even worse because they had spent all that money and they're currently, you know, 2 games below 500 or 1 game below 500, whatever it is. Yeah. But anyway, let's get to our start bench cut, which is 3 draft guys that I know Austin and Brian, both of you know pretty well. And it's Wyatt Langford, Max Clark, and Walker Jenkins. Austin, I'm going to you first just because.
All right. Well, I don't know if I should do a Rangers rant or whatnot, but yeah, all 3 of these guys you can't go wrong with. And I swear to God, if the Rangers draft another pitcher or some overrated bat over one of these guys, I'm going to be mad. But for starting, I would choose Max Clark just because I think I love his projection. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he's the exact kind of player who the right team is going to tap into his power and have him take more aggressive hacks once he develops. I feel like he has a flatter swing path right now that he's more focused on hitting the ball rather than hitting home runs, at least based off the video that I've seen. And he's a really good defender. He runs really well. He's potentially a 5-tool player. So I'm going to start him. Walker Jenkins, you can't go wrong with. but I would bench Wyatt Langford just because he's a college bat, and I know I'm gonna piss off a lot of people cutting Walker Jenkins because Jenkins and Clark are basically the two best prep bats that you can find in the draft, and you can't go wrong with either. But for experience purposes, I would rather have Langford on the bench than Jenkins. So that's what I got. Start Clark, bench Langford, cut Jenkins.
Wow, interesting. Brian, let's hear your thoughts on this.
I really have all these guys kind of like grouped together. I think they're pretty much locked unless something crazy happens into top 5 picks this year. I don't. I honestly don't see how they would drop any further.
The Rangers would do something crazy. I'm just telling you.
I don't see it this year. I think like these 3 guys are just like are the real deal. But I would start Wyatt Langford personally. He's just completely raked for 2 years now in the SEC. More confident, taking a SEC hitter than a high school bat when it's like, this close and like perceived talent level, I guess. Langford has power. He doesn't, great plate discipline, doesn't chase, makes contact, handles the loss. Like he does everything and he looks the part doing it. So like that's for me, that's just like an easier choice, I feel. Bench, this is like where it's tough because I go back and forth on these 2 guys, but I guess I'll bench Walker Jenkins. I think he's pretty safe bet to be an above average hitter in the pros. He's had some injury stuff that, slightly concerning, but the bat's really never been in question. And unfortunately I'll have to cut Max Clark, who I agrees has that like 5-tool talent level, kind of has that profile, and he's done nothing but perform. The only real knock, I guess, on him would be he's not really projectable physically. He's kind of maxed out, and like he doesn't have like a true like carrying tool. It's kind of just everything's above average to plus, but nothing's like excellent. So I don't know. I would go Langford, Jenkins, Clark, but it's super close, and I really wish I didn't have to cut anybody.
Yeah. I make
Thanks,
I
Drake.
make these. I make these hard on purpose. It's getting not only us thinking, but the listeners thinking. I think you can't really. Well, if you think about it this way, the way with risk, Clark and Jenkins are the most risky because they're prep bats, obviously. Wyatt Langford is a college bat, so there's a lot less risk with him than Clark and Jenkins. But I think you can't really overlook who Max Clark is and how much hype there is around him and how good of a player he actually is. Literally, we had a meeting with our baseball team, and we mentioned Max Clark. That's how like popular this guy is. And so I think based on the kind of player that he is, how much potential he has, you got to start Max Clark, Wyatt Langford on the bench, and you're cutting Walker Jenkins. Just because I think that risk factor with Langford outweighs Walker Jenkins by a significant portion. But yeah, this was very hard. So
Whoa, Drake. Did we just agree on something?
we're gonna move on because I'm not gonna answer that question. So yeah, I'm not gonna answer that question. But anyway, now we go to the portion where we have had some significant takes from people, especially one involving a Sir Anthony Volpe from a Sir Austin Farmer.
Excuse me, sorry.
But now we're going to overrated, underrated. And Brian, I want to get your overrated out of the way first because yours is very interesting. I'd love to hear it.
You said my overrated first?
Yeah, we're gonna do overrated first, then we'll go to our underrated.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so my overrated, I took like literally like 2 seconds to come up with the name, is Jacob Berry from the Marlins, who was 6th overall pick last year at LSU, and never understood him being a 6th round pick. I know he has his his fans, and he's still ranked very highly on a lot of lists, which continues to confuse me. He's been about as bad as an SEC hitter can be in the lower minors. I think his OPS is still under 600. He's not walking. He's striking out. He's not hitting for power. And to be clear, I don't think he's this bad. There might be some other things going on behind the scenes, injury stuff. We don't know. But the reason why I question that pick that high, and really why I had him ranked lower than most people in general, he never really showed like incredible power in college. Like his exit velocities were just okay. They were never great. And it wasn't like he was some type of like amazing contact hitter to make up for that. He was just, above average in that regard. And he was very clearly not a third baseman or an outfielder. He's almost definitely going to be a first baseman or a DH. And if you're a first baseman or a DH, you need to hit for a lot of power. And I just didn't see where that was going to happen. He always seemed to me as a guy who was kind of just like developed very quickly, like physically. So even though he was younger, he was already like more physically mature than a lot of people he was playing against. And I don't know. I never really understood why he was ranked so high. And like I said, he's been really struggling so far this year. And while I am surprised it's been this bad, I'm not surprised he, has fallen in rankings and stuff. And I don't really see a top 100 prospect at all. I don't, at this point. And it's unfortunate, but I really don't understand what other people are seeing, because there's been a lot of questions and he hasn't performed. So, you know, that's kind of just my take on it. But I hope he figures it out and turns it around.
Wow, that is very interesting. Because when you think around a first round pick, a lot of fans kind of like overrate the crap out of them, saying like it's
Thank you for saying
basically a
that.
star or bust kind of like. And what you just explained was like barely a replacement level player, basically, like a guy with very little power, striking out a lot, like. But we have seen this with first round picks, so it's really interesting what you were just explaining there.
Well, like I didn't really think he was a first round pick. Like I wouldn't have taken him if I had a first round pick. I probably wouldn't have taken him at any point in the first round last year. So like that's kind of like eyes of the beholder, or whatever you want to call it. Like, so you can hype him up and all that because of where he's picked, but teams make really bad picks all the time. And yeah, not to say, like, again, like I'm not saying Jake Berry can't turn around, because he has been an above average hitter. He did it in the SEC, which means something. He has shown power. It's just not like, plus, it's not like plus 60 grade power or anything like that. So that's like the red flag. It's like first baseman doesn't have plus power. Like already that's going to be tough. You have to really be in like a super good bat the ball guy with walks and all that. So, that's kind of like what my fear was. And now the slow start is just kind of just adds on to it for me.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of Barry early on this season, and I do remember seeing him at Shriners last year, and I really liked the way the ball jumped off the bat, and I thought that he had potential. But yeah, I didn't necessarily agree with the rest of the world about him. But yeah, just when I saw him earlier this season, he was not making good reads. His pitch recognition was not that good. He was chasing a lot, he was whiffing a lot, and just yeah, I think that whenever people see like, oh, top 10 pick or close to top five, like they automatically think like, oh, superstar. And I just hope that people start to think about it, and it's like, don't just rush to an assumption. Like people definitely do that, and it frustrates me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Now, Austin, we'll go to yours because yours is a little bit of a yeah. We'll just go with yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, so mine is going to be Evan Carter. I personally really like Carter. I do think that he'll be an above average hitter overall. He should I project him to hit around 265, 270-ish with 25 plus bombs. However, him being the number one Rangers prospect, I don't understand how people think that he's going to hit a ton of home runs. And it just kind of feels like he's being way overhyped right now. And that being said, I really do think he'll be a good player. It's just, you don't need to be a superstar to be a good player. And it's like any time that someone sees that, oh, number one prospect for a team, they're going to be really, really good or great even. For me, it's just Evan Carter will be a solid piece in the lineup, and I think he'll produce, but he's not going to be like a 40 home run bat who hits 300. So that's why I have Evan Carter as my overrated.
Very interesting there. Yeah, and you also, I don't mean to like dip into like, card prices, but his card prices are pretty insane right now just because of like his rankings and what he's doing lately. So it is pretty interesting to.
Yeah, I saw a first Bowman Chrome Sapphire the other day on Twitter. I think I showed you this. I can't remember if it was a PSA 9 or a PSA 10, but someone was asking like $105 for it. And the first thought that came through my mind is once people realize that he's not this 40 home run bat who hits 300, like that's going to be a $30 card eventually.
All right, that's very interesting. But now it's time for me to tick off a lot of Cardinal fans here. But I got to go with Mason Wynn for my overrated. Before everybody clicks off the video, because this will be on YouTube, we have had people say, Cardinal fans, other fans say that Mason Wynn should already be in the majors and should already be the starting shortstop of the St. Louis Cardinals. And this is no knock at Mason Wynn. Mason Wynn is a very talented player, 80 arm, above average fielder. He should be an above average hitter with some power. But no way, his bat is still really risky, especially for his age. He is 21 in AAA, and he is hitting decently, but his bat has so much risk. I remember from AFL, his bat really wasn't all that impressive. I mean, it still was pretty good, but it wasn't like to the point where he should be in the majors at 21 years old, kind of like not a Julio type of bat. But it's just people need to realize he needs time to develop because, if you put him in the majors right then and there, and just because of a good spring training, you should not be overrating Mason Wynn to be this star shortstop that is going to be, a game changer in every lineup, because he's more of a defensive type of prospect than an offensive. But at the end of the day, it's just people now are overrating Mason Wynn. And I just want to see him develop because he's a fun guy to watch. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Hasn't Paul DeYoung been like really good this year?
Yeah, he's been hitting the crap out of the ball.
Yeah, so
But this was before DeYoung came back, so a lot of Cardinal fans really gave up on Paul DeYoung. So
I think that's a fair fair thing. It wasn't looking good for Paul DeYoung for a while, but yeah, I just at this point, like, why call him up if you don't need to? You let him get a more playing time AAA, maybe in a full season, and go from there. Yeah, I'm a big Mason Wynn fan. I always struggle with these type of like we've talked about this, outside of podcasts and stuff, but like I have trouble like with the overrated, underrated thing just because like everyone's ratings are just so different. And like if you're telling me Mason Wynn is, a MVP, candidate, then I'd be like, yeah, he's overrated. But like if you're saying he's an everyday shortstop who, is dynamic, does a bunch of good things, and no, I think he's rated perfectly fine. So kind of depends on who you ask and talk to, but I certainly agree that there's just no reason to rush him.
oh yeah, 100%. It's just I don't know. It's just Twitter.
Of course,
just seeing people.
yeah,
just seeing people say, "Oh, good spring training equals he should be our starting shortstop." If you want to, because see, the Cardinals did that with Jordan Walker, and you know, as much as I wanted to say Jordan Walker was ready, I just don't think he really ever was ready yet. And you give him a little bit of time in AAA, then you see if he's ready. And then when they put him in the majors, he goes back down and he's starting to heat back up, but really when that demotion kind of killed his confidence. So it's like now he has to re-get that confidence back. And I just don't want to see that with Mason Wynn too, because obviously Mason Wynn at when he's perfectly normal, he's above average shortstop, really good fielder, plus arm strength, like probably top of the order bat. Like it's just I don't know. Just fans like to overrate players.
And people need to remember too that most of these prospects are anywhere from like 18 to 22 years old. So if you were to call them up to the majors before they were ready, they would get crushed. And why do that to their confidence? Because it's like even the better prospects, they still take a couple years before they warm up to big league pitching. Like I think people have become so accustomed to like Juan Soto coming out of fire. I think he spent like 2 months in the minor leagues, and everyone was like, "Oh, 19-year-old, blah blah blah," and so now it's like that's the expectation, and people have to remember that development takes time. Even when they're called up, it doesn't mean they're fully developed.
I also think like baseball is just so different than, prospects in the NFL or the draft and even the NBA. It's like it doesn't it doesn't guys just don't come up and then like, oh, they're a star player and they're starting and they're doing all these things. Like, yeah, there's always going to be adjustments no matter how good you are. And the Juan Sotos and the Acuñas are, they're a dime a dozen. Like that doesn't happen that often. Most of the time, there's an adjustment period. Even like someone like Julio Rodriguez, who had an amazing season, he's been really bad this year. Like it's just like linear. I always say like prospect growth is not linear. It's like there's ups and downs, and you know just can't expect everything to
And
work out right away.
Sorry, Brian.
Yep.
And Julio still could be a 2020 guy too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was perfectly said. But let's go to the more underrated aspect where you don't feel that these guys are properly rated, like they are barely talked about. So Brian, I'll go back to you for that one.
Sure. So, I actually had like a few guys lined up because I went with Jacob Berry, who's a Marlins prospect. I was like, you know what, let's do an all Marlins. So my choice for like most underrated or one of the most underrated, whatever you want to call it, is Khalil Watson, who I think just about everyone jumped the ship after last year. He was super hyped, fell in the draft, but was still like, still got the hype surrounding him. He got paid like, he was picked much earlier. I think he was like middle of the first round. And his first full year last year was a mess. He struck out like 35%. He barely walked, didn't get on base, not much power, very raw defensively. And then there was just like a ton of off-field issues. There's obviously the famous clip of him, making, doing terrible gestures towards an umpire and then getting suspended. And he missed a lot of time because of off-field stuff. And it was just a disaster first year for him. And some of that like maturity stuff was kind of like, it was not to say that it was like a huge problem, but it was a factor in the draft going in. He was somebody that like he didn't play at a lot of events. He wasn't seen a whole ton. Like there wasn't a huge track record for him. So he was like always going to be a risk because of that, plus like some, maturity stuff as well. And then he had like the terrible season. He's with the Marlins, who haven't developed a hitter in forever. So I think it was very easy to write him off. I was a huge Khalil Watson fan during that draft class, and even I was like this could be like this might be it. Like this it may never may never get back on track here just because it's performance plus off-field stuff that's scary. That's such, right off the bat. But to his credit, everything I heard going into this season was he really dedicated himself. He was listening to the right people. He got on board. He really put in the effort. And, seeing clips and things from him from the spring, like his swing still looked just as explosive and as I ever saw it. That's kind of why I was so in on him, just because the amount of power he generates from his swing for a small guy is just incredible. He's such a twitchy, dynamic athlete. And now and I think another part of it was too, going into this, he had that terrible year in A ball. The Marlins still promoted him to high A. So even with everything that happened, he was 19 to start the year. They said, we're putting you in high A. And so far, he was hurt for a little bit. So far, he's been pretty good. He has like an 800 OPS. He's walking almost as much as he's striking out, and the strikeout rate's not high. He's making contact. He's still playing shortstop, and who knows if that ever develops to the point where you can do that long term. But the point is, like, he's performing now. He's at a higher level. He just turned 20 last month. I kind of don't understand why people are not kind of like just taking note of this and acknowledging it, because it just seems like a guy who's really made the effort and put in the work, and he's the talent that we saw. It's starting to play. So yeah, I'm gonna bang the drum for Khalil Watson all day and say, like, let's take notice of this, because this guy was highly rated for a reason. So that's my underrated pick right now. He's gone from like probably too hyped now, like now no one's even paying attention. So he's both ends of the spectrum there. It's pretty interesting.
So basically, with what you were saying, that he had a lot of hype, then basically people are now off his train. I know Austin is off his train, so maybe Austin would want a word here, but
Yeah, so overall, like I do really like Watson's power potential. However, when I saw him earlier this season, and I do realize that early in the season, anything can happen and it's still colder weather, etc. But just the games that I saw him, I really was not impressed with his defense. I think that he's a second baseman long term, or possibly a left fielder, because like even on routine plays at short, it's just like his hands were unsteady. He wasn't making good reads. And I mean, he's got range and he's got athleticism. And so I'm not going to disagree with you too much. I don't necessarily care for the bat all that much. I do think that the power is his carrying tool, but just I think the main thing that really got me off the Watson train was just seeing how poor his defense was. And I don't think that he sticks it short. So that's gonna be my 2 cents on it. I don't want to drag this on too much.
now Austin, I thought that there was gonna be a lot more fireworks, because there have been times where you told me that you hate Khalil Watson at this point, but I think what Brian was saying was very factual. So
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like Brian has a way of presenting the facts where it really gets you thinking, and I agree with him what he said. So I definitely did hate Watson at one point, but just I think when you come at it from that aspect, I will say I am off the train, but we'll see what happens with Watson.
now you're underrated, obviously. Is you tweet about him, you talk about him 24/7. So in not my books, he is very overrated by you, but he is underrated by a lot of other people. So I will let you go ahead and take over.
So my underrated prospect is going to be San Diego Padres farmhand pitcher Victor Lizarraga. Now, Lizarraga is only 19 years old and already in high A, so he's advancing pretty nicely. and I think he has potential to have 3+ pitches. His fastball is low 90s right now, but there's a lot of life to it. And I think that as he continues to develop, the velo will come, especially with the amount of life. I think it's just bound to happen. And his curveball looks really good. I think he could throw it more, but I think with the break and the spin, I think it does have potential to be plus as well. But the selling point for me is Victor Lizarraga's changeup. That thing is absolutely filthy. I feel like he's going to create a lot of swing and miss, and he's going to create a lot of weak ground balls with it moving forward. So I feel like that, especially with a big market team like the Padres, I feel like not enough fans are talking about him. I do realize that Lesko is ahead of him as well as Robbie Snelling. Both are absolute studs. Hopefully Lesko comes back healthy. But Lizarraga, I feel, is right behind them. And I think that he does have a chance to compete as a Padres #1 pitcher in the farm system. I'm not saying that he will be. I just think that he's that good that he'll compete for that title. And just, yeah, already 19 and high, he could end up in Double-A. He did have a rough first few starts, but he seems to be really picking it back up. And yeah, I'm sorry for the way that I handle prospects, but when I really get behind a prospect, like I'm all on board. So that's my underrated.
Yeah, I will throw in a name. This is my underrated, but you were talking about Padres farmhand pitchers, and you didn't even mention Adam Mazur, if that's how you say his name. But he's up there with Snelling, Lizarraga, and Lesko. I mean that's if Lesko comes back healthy and all that. But Mazur looks like a really good pitcher. Like I've seen a few of his starts, but yeah, that's interesting with Lizarraga, man. But yeah, from my point of view, you overrated the crap out of him. But from your point of view, and probably from Brian's, who hasn't heard you talk about Lizarraga all that much, he is very underrated because the Padres, like a lot of their pitchers, when they're being talked about, no one mentions Lizarraga. So I completely agree with you there.
I literally
And,
never heard of him until just now.
well, now you know who he is, Brian. And when he becomes a future mid-rotation pitcher who competes for, all-star games and everything, you know who spoke of him first.
That's fair.
Austin, we got to remember we're both West Coast and he's East Coast.
Well, that is that. I'm more central because I'm Texas. So
Okay, well then. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and go with my foreshadowing from earlier with the start of the day. I want to talk about how underrated Mike Collado is. And if I butchered that name, I am super sorry. But this guy I saw at ACL, and this guy has one of the weirdest stances I've ever seen. His front foot is pointed all the way to the catcher, and it like his toes are pointed to the catcher. But yet this dude barrels balls regularly. He's a really patient hitter. He'll hit for a high average. He'll have some power, but man, he's a switch hitter. Basically, he is more of like defensively, he's not as strong, but he's still his bat will carry him going forward. But yeah, I mean, I saw him at third base, I saw him at first base. So basically, from that, I think Collado is a guy to really watch for the Guardians because I've realized something though. I talk a lot about the Guardians prospects because I think one time we had Brian on Austin and I started talking about Jake Fox and like now I'm talking about Mike Collado. Like maybe I'm a closet Guardians fan. I don't know. But yeah, Collado is a guy to really watch for the Guardians, in my opinion.
Yeah, just from like the way you're describing him, it just sounds like I think maybe one reason why you you keep like but you get attracted to these Guardians guys. They tend to go after a lot of the same type of hitters with like these little contact guys who just hit everything and you know doesn't matter. Yeah, they're 5'8" or 5'9", they hit. So I don't know. Maybe that's part of it for you. The only thing I am familiar with him. The only thing that like is negative. I'm not gonna say negative, but I think he's like already like going to be eligible for Rule 5 draft. Like he's already like 20 or 21. He's in A ball. So he seems like a guy like I can't see him next year getting put on the 40-man roster or something if he's only playing A ball. He seems like a guy that, a team who, you know, isn't expected to compete or is going to throw guys out there and see what sticks. Like he seems like a guy like who you take in the Rule 5 draft and just, see if he could develop into something. Because like you said, there are some bat to ball, like some insane bat to ball skills here, and for a team that's not competing, you might as well give it a try. But it's hard to see him, you know, playing with the Guardians necessarily, just because he's so far down in A ball still. So, but somebody definitely that's a good name to keep an eye on because good shot he gets a pro chance if he keeps hitting like this, just from like a Rule 5 standpoint or something.
Yeah, that is something to really watch out, especially for Guardians fans. I probably just got them hyped on Kayado, but or yeah, I don't know if I'm saying this name wrong or right, but yeah, but I think wherever he ends up, he could rise in the system. That's one reason why I decided to pick him, because he is 20 in low A, but he's excelling there, and he should be at least. I think sooner rather than later we'll see him in high A. But you are right; he would be really low on the Guardians, because they have so many infielders, shortstops, third basemen that are coming up through the system that are better and have more power than him. So that
More
is very true.
experience, just
Yeah.
upper levels. They got like Rokio, who's like MLB ready. He's not in they just have so many guys like that. It's just like just have like all these middle infielders or infielders just waiting to be called up. So yeah, so much depth for the Guardians.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they have like 20 shortstops, I swear. So you're hit the nail on the head with that. So, but let's move on to our final portion that I think everyone would like this idea. Basically, if you're a card collector, fantasy person, whoever, we have 5 sleeper or riser prospects from any team. Doesn't matter how old, how young. Doesn't really matter. Austin, I'll let you go first since you're the first one listed.
All right. So my top 5 sleeper or riser prospects. Number 1 is going to be Daniel Cueva of the Texas Rangers. Number 2 will be Peyton Graham of the Detroit Tigers. Number 3 will be Brandon Birdsell of the Chicago Cubs. Number 4 will be Aiden Curry of the Texas Rangers. And the number 5 is a guy who I recently discovered, and I really love his stuff. Carlos F. Rodriguez of the Milwaukee Brewers. I think that guy has a plus curveball. I saw a start against the Rocket City Trash Pandas, and he was incredibly dominant. And yeah, Carlos F. Rodriguez, I think, will end up shooting up people's list eventually someday. But yeah, so back to my number 1 sleeper prospect, Daniel Cueva. He's off to a pretty rough start. Well, I wouldn't say pretty rough, but he's not like hitting spectacularly or anything right now. But I do really like his game. I do think that he'll hit for a good average. Now, the power, I think, will be more gap to gap, but he is a good middle infielder as well. And then Peyton Graham, I saw him quite a bit with Oklahoma. He's another guy who's struggling to start the season. And overall, I like his game. I think that he has a chance to stick it short. He could end up moving to third, so either one works with him. But I do like his pop, and I think he'll hit decently enough, but he will have to start picking things up here. And number 3, Brandon Birdsell. I've seen him all the way back to when he was at Willis High School. So he's a guy that I've gotten a lot of coverage of. With Texas Tech, he hit 99 at one point. He does have injury history. He's had at least 1 Tommy John. I think he's had 2 even. But the Cubs got him as kind of a risky pick. I do think there is reliever risk with him, but he's starting off shoving in 2023. And I do think that he will be developed as a starter moving forward. Now, whether he stays as one, I still think that we're still a couple of years out from that. But Yeah, he's a guy who I think that a lot of people are sleeping on right now. And then number 4, it was actually a guy that went undrafted in 2020 in Aiden Curry, and I saw a start of him like a couple weeks ago, and he was 90 to 94, topped out at 95. And I would say his curveball is at least above average, and I liked his location too for the most part. So those are my 5 sleepers.
Austin, I just want to say one thing. I thought that was he started off shoving. We got to make a shirt that says that, and then try to sell that because that'd be hilarious if somebody just walked around with that starting off shoving with like a
Yeah.
shovel, and but it's not ing, it's just in. That would be hilarious. But anyway, that was very interesting. Brian, who are your 5?
So my first one is Chase Meadroth. He was so just to be clear, the first like I kind of like made like it more of a drafty type focus. Mostly the first 4 guys are all guys who were taken the last couple years in the draft. So Meadroth was second baseman, infielder from San Diego. Red Sox drafted in the 4th round, and he was like a really high bat the ball, doesn't chase out of the zone type of guy, but not much power and fringy defense. And the draft was less than a year ago, and he's in Double A. And he's got on the season 934 OPS, and he's playing second and third base. And he kind of reminds me of Nick York in a lot of ways. Kind of very similar profile. They both like move very quickly through the minors, and their the defensive home might, who knows, but they can clearly, they control the strike zone, make a lot of contact, and the high probability major leaguer. So I really like that pick by the Red Sox last year in the 4th round, and seems to be paying off. Next guy I have is Ignacio Alvarez. He's a 5th rounder last year by the Braves. From Riverside City College, the JUCO program. And this is a guy who like really flew under the radar. I had never heard of him, and I don't think until he was drafted. A lot of JUCO guys, especially hitters, are not really, valued very highly. Hardly any get drafted at all. But the Braves took Alvarez, and not long after the draft, we were hearing like, oh, this is one of the steals of the draft. And he just has insane contact ability, and that's shown up in pro ball. He's in high A as a 20-year-old playing shortstop. He's questionable to stick there, but he's got 30 walks and only 17 strikeouts. No home runs yet, but he's got a thicker build. He's shown, he has some raw pop, so I think it'll come. And this is a guy looks like he is going to stick on the left side of the infield, and he can hit, and it only cost him a 5th round pick. So just like very interesting that like how he was really, I don't recall seeing him on any list. He certainly wasn't on the Prospects Live draft board, and really just awesome scouting, and sticking with what their scouts saw to pick Alvarez. They gave him like $500,000 as a 5th rounder. So yeah, interesting guy for sure. Third guy is Zach DeCenzo, also drafted last year. He was a day 3 pick in the 12th round by the Astros. I saw him twice live, once in 2021, once 22 and 2022 in the MLB Draft League. And I kind of didn't understand why teams were like so off of him, it seemed like. And he was like really like a lanky, like a good length in his body, good frame. He's like 6'4", 220, has like crazy raw power, just like questions with the contact and his defense. And he's in high A now, and he's got some of the highest exit velos in all of minor league baseball. Don't know where he's going to fit defensively. He's played first, third, and second. When I saw him, I figured he'd be a first baseman, but pretty good outcome so far for a 12th round pick. And obviously the Astros have a history of getting a lot out of these day 3 type of hitters. So someone to watch for sure. Fourth one, another guy drafted last year on day 3, CJ Culpepper, who went to California Baptist. He was drafted by the Twins, 13th round. He was originally a closer at Cal Baptist, and then he was a closer on the Cape. Was really good. Good fastball, good sinker, kind of like a little bit of a funky arm action. Then he started his junior year last year, and his velocity took a big dip, which kind of expected, and his secondaries weren't as sharp. He's with the he's starting still. He's an A ball for the Twins, and his fastball velocity is way up. He was averaging over 95 this last start. He's been like 94 plus on the year through his first 5 starts. He's got a high spin slider. He's got good fastball, good sinker. He's got like 3 different types of fastballs, and he's kind of like it's primarily like a 3-pitch mix, but he has 6 pitches he can go to. He's always thrown a good amount of strikes. He's funky. He's tough to square. He's really filled out his body. He's looked like, especially his lower half. You see videos, like he looks way thicker. I really liked him going in last year's draft class. So looks like the Twins might hit a home run with this guy. He might be a reliever just because there's some like funkiness with like his arm, the way his arm works. But I mean, huge velo boost is a good sign, and clearly has the other traits. So definitely someone I'll be watching. My last one is a personal favorite of mine, maybe the most interesting and unique player in all of baseball right now. Yeah, and not just the minor leagues, all of baseball. Clayton Andrews. He is a reliever. He's purely a reliever. So don't get too excited now. He's not going to be, going 7+ innings. It's not happening. But he's in AAA, and he's shoving, as our friend Austin here would say. He was a two-way. He was like a day 3 pick a few years, 2018. He was a two-way guy at Long Beach State, and he actually hit and pitched his first full season in the minors. Now he's exclusively a pitcher. He's also only 5'6" and 160 pounds. And a lot of reason why people were kind of off of him because of his size, and his velocity would kind of fluctuate and all that. Like he was down to like 80, 88, 90, where like, when he first started, he was up to 94. He had I think he had Tommy John. He was out for pretty much the last 3 years. 2020 was canceled, barely pitched 2021 or 2020. Came back this year, and he's averaging 94 on his fastball. He's got like a big slider, high spin slider. It's like 2,800 RPMs, and he's got an excellent changeup that is just it plays well off his fastball, and it's an excellent swing and miss pitch. And he's just very hard to, I think, for hitters to adjust because he's so small and he throws with like a crossfire delivery. It's just very hard for hitters to pick him up. And right now he has under 2 ERA, 20 strikeouts, 3 walks, and 14 innings. Velocity's up. He's got 3 pitches. I think that I could see this guy even being like a 3-inning guy, like kind of like what the Rays do. Well, they'll have like an opener, 2-3 innings, something like that, and just kind of like a different look than what most hitters are expecting. He's already 26, so it's not like there's like a huge ceiling here, but I think he's just like such a awesome story, and someone who I don't think most baseball players are aware, baseball fans are aware of. But I think he's going to be a bullpen piece, within the next year at least, maybe even as soon as this summer. So yeah, Clayton Andrews, definitely one of the most exciting, interesting players I think in all baseball. That's my 5.
All right, 2 things. One, now we got Austin. We got Brian saying he's shoving now, so that's pretty funny. But
Nice.
2, don't get that idea of the Rays getting a pitcher that's decent, because they'll go and trade for Clayton Andrews and turn him into a Cy Young Award winner. I don't know how they do it, like I said, but it's the Rays cheating lab. That's what they call it. but that's literally what they call it. But yeah, props to the Rays and props to Brian, because I never heard of Clayton Andrews, but
He's a Brewers prospect. He's not a Rays prospect.
no, I know,
Oh, okay,
I'm
just
just
making
saying.
sure.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
he's
I
someone
got you.
I really liked in college. Like I saw like clips of him, and it's just like I was like, man, like this is so different. I gotta follow along. And just like 3 years of not pitching and then coming back and he looks better than ever. It's like, man, I just want this 5'6" little pitcher to just strike everyone out. So see what happens.
So I guess what I should have said was props to the Brewers and props to the Rays, but just the Rays are just but yeah. So I actually do have, just like you, a personal favorite on mine. But all these guys I saw at Arizona Complex League, and one we already kind of touched up on him, Austin. We kind of touched up on Graham Pauly a little bit, but I was there when he hit his first pro ball home run. Very good bat to ball skills, has some speed. Basically, I think he rises really quickly, especially because his hit is that good. My second is with the Royals. His name is Lisandro Rodriguez. A lot of people probably don't know who that is, but another ACL guy who really impressed me with his bat to ball skills. Does have some power in his bat. Number three, I'm going to skip over my number three and go to my number four. My basically is Dylan O'Ray of the Milwaukee Brewers. Another basically little guy, but has some speed and contact and just does everything right. And that's what I loved about him out here at the ACL. And number four would be Juan Benjamin of the Cleveland Guardians. Another guy that I would go to an ACL game to see, Angel Ganeo. I know I said that name wrong, but and Mike Callado. And I stumbled upon Juan Benjamin, and this dude just, oh my goodness. The ball flies off his bat. He has some speed. He's going to have definite power potential in his bat. But yeah, and then the last guy I want to highlight is Luis Quesudo, who I guarantee you not a lot of people know who he is, but he's out of the D-back system. And I have a personal story with Luis Quesudo. I was at a game and I was actually filming for Prospects Worldwide, and he was having just a tough day. I think he struck out like 2 or 3 times, and he just needed a little bit of fortune. And he walks up to me at the end of the dugout, and he gets my attention, and he points red or black batting gloves, or red or white, whatever it was. And I pointed, and I said, "Yeah, red." And he like puts a thumbs up, and next at bat, he doubles, and he actually points at me, and I got all of his at bats are on camera, and we pretty much basically got together, and I shared basically the video with him, and he ended up giving me his hat and stuff like that. But not only is that just a cool story, he's also a darn good hitter too. He is currently hurt, so get well soon to him. But I think that 2024, I don't know how severe his 2023 is. He hasn't played yet, but maybe end 2023, start 2024 is gonna be the start of people finally noticing this guy, and the Diamondbacks actually kind of highlighting him as a really good player, because that's what Luis Quesudo is. But yeah, those are my five.
So Dylan O'Ray was someone we at Prospects Live we heard some about. He's from, I believe he's Canadian, and so like a lot of those guys don't get as much exposure as a lot of the guys in the States, which is understandable. But and I think like a lot of people were just off of him because I think he's like 5'7", and he's like small, like a 5'7". He's not like like a thick Jose Altuve type, but he like just hits everything. And that's like another team like the Brewers, like they kind of like to go for those guys, like Tyler Black and some other guys, like smaller dudes that just hit. So yeah, that was really I really like that pick. I thought it was like I wasn't expecting him to get drafted at all, just because it's Canadian, little Canadian guy. Nobody really paid much attention to, but yeah, really cool story there. I like that sleep pick for sure.
All right, well, little Canadian guy. I guess that's Dylan O'Ray's new nickname.
Yeah,
Little
Canadian, little Canuck. Yeah.
All right, well, on that note, this has been an installment of Prospects Overload. I almost forgot the time because I was trying so not to laugh. But I'm your host, Drake Mann. You can follow me on Twitter at DrakeMann4. My co-host, Austin Farmer. Austin, anything you want to plug, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at AustinF0421, and this was an absolute blast. Little Canuck has now been dubbed and is a thing. So yeah, it was a really fun time, guys.
Yeah, and our guest today, Brian Recca. Brian, where can they find you, and anything you want to plug or say?
So my Twitter handle is usually where most of my, a lot of my stuff is. It's at Brian_Recca, RECCA. And you'll find all my content on prospectslive.com. We also have a YouTube channel, some videos on there. Yeah, so this was awesome. Thanks for having me again. It's been a great time for sure.
Yeah, we got two trademarks going on here. We got He's Shoving and we got Little Canuck. So on that note, peace, everybody.
Peace, guys.